My name is Ed Manion. I'm an admissions coordinator here at Wasatch Crest. And in honor of National Recovery Month, I would like to share my story with you guys. Um, Sorry, it's the first time I'm doing Facebook Live and it's a bunch of stuff popping up on my screen. So I am also an alumni of the program, which I think kind of gives me a unique perspective to be able to help people because I understand what it's like to be a client here. So getting into my story without harping too much on the past, I guess I want to describe what it was like immediately before entering treatment. I am someone who has been to treatment before. I had some sobriety at previous times in my life, but was never able to maintain long term sobriety. So, immediately prior coming into Wasatch Crest, I think if I had to put a word to the feelings I was experiencing, it would be pretty hopeless. I just remember waking up every day and uh, just feeling like very depressed and just thinking like I was stuck in this cycle of doing these repetitive things that I knew were damaging my life, but I did not have the power to change. So it was a very hopeless feeling. So I ended up getting in touch with someone who actually went through Wasatch Crest themselves and was also in long term sobriety at the time and still is. And they had recommended the program. So I would say getting into Wasatch Crest was a very easy process. I just called the phone number. I spoke with Jessica. She was able to get me into treatment that same day, which was a pretty nice relief because I had worked or I was looking into a couple other programs and there was either a wait list or some kind of red tape that I had to get through. But Wasatch Crest was able to immediately get me in, and I had heard great things about the program. So when I first arrived at Wasatch Crest, I would say the first thing I noticed was how beautiful the property is here in Heber. We're located on a pretty big property tucked up in the mountains in Heber Valley, which I've always thought was a very beautiful place. I like the nature setting and I like all the open area that the property sits on. So the first feeling that I had was just being totally blown away by how nice the property of the facility was. And yeah, I was a little nervous coming into treatment. You know, I didn't really know anyone or know what to expect. But I think the staff here and also the other clients at the time made me feel extremely welcome. Rich, my therapist, or was my therapist at the time, who's now the executive director here at Wasatch Crest, just really did a fantastic job of meeting me where I was at. You know, as I mentioned before, I just came in here really down on myself, extremely hopeless. I mean, it was bad. I kind of like laugh about it now, but I really think I was at the point where I'm not sure if I wanted to live anymore, but I didn't want to die. So I was kind of like stuck in this weird place of hopelessness and despair. And Rich and the rest of the staff did an incredible job of showing me so much kindness and compassion at a time in my life where I had very low self esteem and didn't really see a whole lot of worth in myself. So, just moving into the actual program of Wasatch Crest, I would say the thing that I definitely enjoyed most about Wasatch Crest and working in admissions, this is something that I kind of use as a selling point to prospective clients, is our focus on recreational therapy and outdoor activities. So, you know, as I mentioned, Wasatch Crest is located in Heber. The property is absolutely gorgeous. There's so much stuff to do around here. And I think in those early days when I was just so depressed. The outdoor therapy that they do, where we would go out on hikes and we would go rock climbing and we went on the Provo River float and we would just go out and we would do all these like really fun activities. And I'm not sure exactly when it clicked, but I remember being a couple weeks into the program and we were out on this hike. I think it was Mirror Lake was the hike that we were doing. And I just remember like struggling getting up to the top of the hike. I was in pretty rough physical shape at the time. And I just remember getting up to the top of the hike and there just being this gorgeous view. It was in the summertime, it was a totally clear day. The sun was like reflecting off the water just right. And I don't know, I just was like consumed with this feeling that like everything was going to be okay. And I frequently tell people that as like a turning point in my story where like, I felt this feeling that like everything was finally going to be okay. And I remember coming back to the facility that day with this like new outlook on things. And from that day forward, it definitely was not easy. There were still a lot of struggles, which I'll get into in a little bit. But I remember that was like the first day I actually, I don't want to say laughed, but had an enjoyable day without the use of substances or, having a day where I was like consumed by depression. So, fast forwarding a little bit, I completed the residential program. And the second thing I absolutely love about Wasatch Crest is their sober living program. So, after completing 30 days of residential treatment, clients have the option of staying at one of our sober living facilities, which, in my opinion, and I might be a little partial here, but I personally believe they are the nicest sober living facilities in the entire state. And when I first entered sober living, I was still in pretty bad shape. I had completed 30 days of residential treatment, but I had exhausted a lot of my financial resources. I had destroyed a lot of relationships in my life. I was unemployed. And for me, what being at sober living and continuing to do that phase of treatment really helped me with was being able to get back on my feet, being able to work, being able to save money, and then having that opportunity to have a gradual transition back into society from treatment. So I think a lot of times people will go to treatment and they'll have this expectation, or maybe their family members have this expectation of they're just going to go to treatment for 30 days and then they're going to come out and just go back to their life as it was and they're going to be quote unquote fixed. And the reality is it's more complicated than that and usually takes more time. So for me, and I'm not saying this is the case for everyone, but for me, the sober living really afforded me that opportunity to get some additional time under my belt while remaining in the structure of the program, but also reacclimating into the real world and doing things like showing up for work every day and having weekends free to go out and enjoy myself. So that sober living, I stayed at for an additional 4 months. So I was actually in Wasatch Crest total for 5 months, 30 days residential, and then an additional 4 months of sober living. And I think that was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life because it really provided me this strong foundation to get out of treatment and become a functioning member of society again and really just be happy with myself. So, moving on from that, I would say once I got out of the sober living, I still had some issues. I had to basically start over. So I had some issues finding an apartment, finding employment in the area that I wanted to live. I was basically restarting my life. And it was a little bit of a struggle in the beginning, but a thing I commonly tell clients is that's really the hardest part, right? Is getting that initial momentum going, but my experience was that once I got that initial momentum going and I just continued to do the right thing every day, things just got better and better and better. And now I'm in a position where I absolutely love my life and I would not trade it for anything in the world. And I look back on my life, on what it used to be like, and it almost seems like a bad dream. You know, it seems like it wasn't even real in comparison to how happy and how fulfilled I feel today. So, just wrapping things up, I don't want to run for too long, but I would say things that I do to remain sober today that are important to me is first and foremost having a strong support structure. So for me, that looks like going to meetings. I have a sponsor, I have a home group, I work the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been going to the same home group ever since I got sober. And I've met so many friends from that meeting that I hang out with on a regular basis and really just do cool stuff with. And that brings me to the second thing I do to stay sober. I personally stay very active. As I mentioned before, one thing I loved about Wasatch Crest was the focus on outdoor recreation, and I really fell in love with rock climbing when I was a client here. So I originally grew up in New York. I had never really even seen a mountain until I moved out to Utah. And I went rock climbing for the first time as a client here at Wasatch Crest and absolutely fell in love with it. And now it's something I do regularly. It really helps me in my sobriety. For me, I think what I really enjoy about rock climbing and really just like exercise or physical activity in general is I think it forces me to be present, and I think I get like that endorphin rush, all those like feel good chemicals going through my body that really for me work as a substitute for drugs and alcohol. So just offering any tips to anyone who's currently struggling or is maybe new to sobriety, I would say really the most important thing is reaching out for help. I know with me early on, I kind of felt like a burden or a disappointment, and it was very difficult for me to actually reach out to someone and say, hey, I have a problem and I need help. And again, I think calling Wasatch Crest and entering treatment is probably one of the best, if not the best, decision I've ever made in my entire life. So I would say reaching out for help is very important. Developing a solid support structure is very important, whether that's through friends, family, meetings, other people in sobriety. I just think social connection is such an important part of recovery and something that is unfortunately overlooked. And then third, and again, this is just for me, I would say having some type of hobby is very important. Again, for me, that is something like rock climbing or really just anything active and outdoors. So, yeah, that's wrapping it up. I hope I was able to explain my story well and maybe help someone or convince someone on the fence to give someone a call and try to get some help. As I said before, that was my first time ever doing a Facebook Live, so please show mercy on me. All right, guys, thank you.